Hello, everyone, and I'm Dr. Rashmi Sarkar. I'm the chair of the ILDS Education Committee and also an ILDS board member. I'm really delighted today to bring to you the very first of our Global Dermatology Leadership webinar series. And the unique thing about this is that these are going to be with live interaction. Now, younger colleagues often ask us, what is that one characteristic that makes a leader? And the answer is, it's not just one characteristic, but an amalgamation of attributes that defines a leader. My favorite quote is the one by John Maxwell, that a leader is one who knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way, describing very well that a leader is one who is focused on his or her vision and mission and also leads by example. A leadership coach would often tell us that the three most important attributes are CHD, C standing for courage, H for honesty and integrity, and D for discipline. But for me here and so many of us there, I think it's the two C's which define a global dermatology leader. And C, which stands for communication, that has to be effective to build up a great team. And C for connectivity with both the team members as well as also the rest of the member dermatologists. So for this today, we have one of the best examples of a global dermatologist leader, and that is none other than Professor Henry W. Lim, who is also the president of our ILDS. You all know him as an inspiring leader, but nevertheless, it is good to share a few words about him. So I will just introduce Professor Henry Lim to all of you. Next, please. Professor Henry W. Lim is the former Clarence S. Livinghood Chair of the Department of Dermatology 1997 to 2017 at the Henry Ford Health, Detroit, Michigan, USA. He received his MD cum laude from State University of New York Downstate Health Sciences University at Brooklyn, New York, USA, and completed his dermatology residency at New York University School of Medicine. He has served as president of the American Academy of Dermatology, which you know is the largest organization of dermatologists all over the world. The American Board of Dermatology, American Dermatological Association, American Society for Photobiology, and also International Union of Photobiology. In 2023, he was elected as the president of the International League of Dermatological Societies, which consists of over 200 international societies from over 100 countries as members, and this represents more than 200,000 dermatologists. Next, please. Now, Professor Lim has received a whole lot of honors, awards, and accolades. Important among these are the 17 presidential citations from the AAD, and in 2020, he was awarded an honorary membership of the AAD. He has also been recognized with the Fred W. Whitehouse, MD, Distinguished Career Award of the Henry Ford Medical Group, the European Academy of Dermatology and Venereology's International Scientific Achievement Award, the Finson Medal from the International Union of Photobiology, an Alumni Achievement Award for Distinguished Service to American Medicine, College of Medicine at the State University of New York Downstate. Dr. Lim also is an honorary member of a large number of international dermatologic societies, to name a few: Austria, France, the Philippines, China, the Baltics, Spain, Taiwan, Peru, and CELAT. Next, please. He has an accomplished academic career, which would be the dream of so many of the young and middle-level dermatologists out here. He has published more than 700 articles and edited 11 textbooks with over 37,600 citations in Google Scholar and an awe-inspiring H index of 97 and I-10 index of 371. Based on publications from 2013 to 23, expertspec.com cited Dr. Lim as the world's top-rated expert on sunscreens and photosensitivity disorders. He was also listed as a top 20 author in dermatology from 2010 to 19 with more than 2,500 citations, and as 2022 Newsweek top 50 best medical dermatologists in the US. Now, on a personal level, I must say that I have been extremely fortunate to have worked as a committee member with Professor Lim when he was the president of the American Academy of Dermatology, and coincidentally also as a board member when he's the president of the ILDS, and hence learned a lot from him, and I'm still learning. So with that, this is a little about Professor Lim. But before we turn on, the lecture you're all waiting to hear, I'd just like to give a very few housekeeping notes for all of you. This is a live webinar. So at the end of the lecture, I will open up question and answer with a few warm-up questions. If you would like to ask a question, please write your name, country, and question in the chat box, mentioning that you would like to speak or put up your hand. We can take a couple of your questions. And with that, I think, now we are all waiting very eagerly to hear Professor Lim's lecture. So over to you, Professor Henry Lim, on your global leadership journey.
Thank you very much, Rashmi, for this very, very nice introduction. My mother, who had just recently passed away, would have been very proud to hear that. But it is truly humbling and an honor to be asked by Rashmi and the ILDS Education Committee to talk about leadership, something that I've been doing because I enjoy it and I'm not looking for any type of recognition. But since I'm being asked to do this, I will do so. And by talking about my journey as I grew up professionally and eventually in the current position as the president of ILDS. The journey itself, I will describe it in somewhat detail because it does inform my leadership style. It does inform my sensitivity as a leader to various aspects of leadership. And hopefully, and this is again a very personal perspective, and hopefully some of them would apply to you and use as you see fit and as you see appropriate. So with that, I'm going to start. If I have control of the slide, I don't. Maybe the next slide, please. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. Next slide. Okay. I was born and raised in Bandung, Indonesia. The reason I want to mention about my upbringing and eventually my journey through medical school and residency is that just to give all of you some perspective as to what I have learned, what I have observed during that period of time, which is a very formative period for me to eventually get to the current position as the president of ILDS. So for those of you, next slide, please. For those of you who may not, just go back one slide, please. This is a build slide, so it's better if I can control it, but right now I cannot. Born and raised in Indonesia, you can see, for those of you who may not be familiar, but probably you are all familiar, Indonesia is an archipelago in the tropics. And the city that I grew up in, I put in an arrow there, which is Bandung, Indonesia. I was brought up in two cultures. Please go back one slide. Is this timed? I don't think I timed it. So I was brought up in two cultures. I went to, we are Chinese. My parents were third generation Indonesian Chinese, but they sent me to Chinese school. So I do, growing up, learn to read and write and understand Chinese culture. This is an important perspective because I grew up in an Indonesian-speaking community. So at that time, obviously this is a given for me and for my family growing up in bilingual societies, as well as having understanding of the two cultures. But it is very helpful as I move on professionally to be interacting with my colleagues around the world. Indonesia, as we all know, is a majority Muslim society. And while Chinese obviously is a minority, a lot of them are Buddhist and as well as Christian. So I grew up with being exposed to all this different culture and different understanding. The next slide, please. Just click. Okay. So with that, I have good understanding and respect for both at that time Chinese as well as Indonesian culture and traditions that extend, as I've mentioned, as I continue to develop and continue to interact with the global community, global dermatology community, for me to have a good appreciation of the value and a good respect of the cultures and traditions that come from different parts of the world. I think this is important as we become a leader globally, as we interact with our colleagues from international forum. The next slide, please. So in terms of the formative years, after high school, my parents sent me to go to Canada to attend university, because they have the impression, and I think that they are correct at that time, that education was better in the US or in North America in general. So they asked me to go. I applied to several schools. Was accepted in McGill University in Montreal. So I spent 3 years in Montreal, and then applied to medical school and went to medical school in the US, as Rashmi has mentioned, State University of New York in Brooklyn. Picture is shown there. Next slide, please. So this is another very important aspect of my quote-unquote growing up at that time, because up to that point, I live at home. Obviously, we come from a middle-class, typical Indonesian family. So we live at home. We have help at home. We have a driver and so on and so forth. But coming to Canada at that time, I have to learn very quickly and very suddenly to live independently for the first time in my life. In addition to that, obviously, English was not spoken at home, so I have to learn a new language and obviously a new culture. That again, looking back, it truly was very helpful for me to be able to grow up very, very quickly on my own, learning new language, new culture, and at the same time to try to live independently myself. The next slide, please. The other part that I did, and again, I didn't think too much about it at that time, I wanted to apply to medical school. Looking back, it was quite amazing that I was able to get into a medical school, because as you know, then, as it is now, getting to medical school, especially as an international student, was a very, very competitive and very rigorous process, which is fine as it is. Academically, I did well, but what I did not have, and again, I didn't appreciate it then, is that I did not have any mentors. I did not have any role models that would sort of guide me towards this very rigorous and competitive process. Somehow I managed to do it. Again, at that time, it was a given. I just did it. But looking back, it was something that I think, had I do it over again, to have a mentor, to identify a mentor, then to identify a role model would be very helpful. But again, at that time, as a new international student, being new to the country, being new to the language and culture, I did not have the opportunity to do that. But nonetheless, this is something that I think the mentorship, as Rashmi had mentioned, is very, very important for the development of the leader. Next slide, please. So what are the lessons learned at that time? I think one aspect is that we have to be appreciative of the opportunity that is given to you. Sometimes you seek those opportunities, but sometimes those opportunities just come to you. Regardless, I think you need to grab it essentially and take full benefits of it, to take full benefit of the opportunity given to you, because not everybody would have that opportunity. And if you enjoy it, you might as well take full benefit of it. Next slide, please. And I've mentioned already that it's important, give me a good appreciation based on my own journey, the importance of mentors and role models. I think this is something that all of you, especially those of you who are in the younger generation, to be able to do that, to try to identify the appropriate mentors and role models. And I'll expand on this because as I continue to move on in my training in terms of mentors and leadership and role models. The next slide, please. So after medical school, I applied to dermatology. Initially, actually, at the end of medical school, I was going to go into pediatrics because at the time, my role model within medical school, which was a senior faculty that was assigned to our little group in medical school, was a pediatrician. And I thought, he's doing a very interesting profession. And so I was getting ready to go into pediatrics. At the final year of medical school, I thought as a pediatrician, I need to know more about the skin, about dermatology. And at the time, I heard NYU has a very good dermatology program. So I decided to take an elective, a 4 weeks elective at NYU. That changed my life. Because essentially, after taking 4 weeks of elective at NYU, I thought this is truly a very, very stimulating and interesting specialty. But by then, my path is already set for pediatrics. In the US at the time, there is a match for pediatric residency program, not for dermatology, but for pediatrics. So by then, I have entered the match, and I was able to get my first choice in pediatric residency. But since dermatology is such an interesting one, I decided to apply also to dermatology, and I only applied to NYU because that was the only university, the only dermatology program that I've been exposed to. And I said, if I want to become a dermatologist, I want to be trained at NYU. If not, I would become a pediatrician. Nowadays, I would not advise my medical students to do that because dermatology is such a competitive specialty. Applying to one residency probably is not the wisest choice. But nonetheless, that's what I did. And again, very fortunately, I was accepted. Again, that time there was no match. So within probably about 2 months of applying to NYU, I was accepted into NYU dermatology residency. The reason I want to show this class picture that was taken during the first year of my residency is severalfold. You can see that this is a class picture taken then. And the next slide, please. Several things that gives me a very good opportunity to start learning about leadership. And this is the part that I want to emphasize, that leadership is by learning, by observing individuals who are good leaders, to see how they manage their life, how they manage their leadership role, and you can learn from them and distill it to become your own style, because not all style would fit you very, very well. I'll highlight that as time goes on. So let me first start with faculty. I was very fortunate that at NYU, they were two internationally recognized dermatology leader in Dr. Rudy Baer, which is on the left. He was the chair who admitted me to the program at NYU, and Dr. Alfred Koffs, the other gentleman in the center. Both of them were presidents of the American Academy of Dermatology. Both of them were members of International League of Dermatological Society. Dr. Baer was a president of ILDS. Dr. Koff actually was the first president of International Foundation of Dermatology, which is now part of ILDS. So at that time, I did not know what ILDS was. I did know about the American Academy of Dermatology, but I did know that both of them were very recognized, not only nationally, but internationally, because in the department, we have constant flow of international leaders coming into the department. So having been exposed to them for 3 years, and subsequently I continued to work with them for many years. I was given the opportunity to learn from them as to how they manage as a leader, at the same time continuing their practice in dermatology. The next slide, please. The other part is that this residency program gives me an opportunity for interaction with people from around the world. Not only we have the typical American medical school graduates in the residency program, but Dr. Baer has the foresight that wanting the department to have international impact. So he had admitted students to the dermatology program, graduate from medical school in Puerto Rico, Ethiopia, as well as Argentina. Fernando Stengel, which is on the upper left corner, for example, had become a leader in Argentinian dermatology. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we had an international meeting in Argentina, and I spent a week with them, and it was truly very, very gratifying to see him again after all these years. But again, this gives me the opportunity of interacting with global dermatology community. Again, that was a given at the time. I didn't think about it, but looking back, that was truly an opportunity that was very, very valuable. Next slide, please. So the other part, again, I'm very, very proud of our cohort of residents. Among the residents, some become departmental chairs as well as full professors in various academic institutions in the US. I became the AAD president. In fact, my vice president, when I was the president, is the person I'm on the second row on the left there. And the person on my left, the one with beard, is Brian Berman. When I was elected as the AAD president, he was elected as the vice president of AAD. So it was truly a fun year to work with my co-resident as president and vice president of the AAD. And of course, the other leaders within the department. And it again gave me the opportunity to develop a long-standing interaction and friendship with many of my residents who are eventually becoming leaders in their own respective areas. The next slide, please. So dermatology residency lesson learned. This gives me the opportunity to develop the skill sets needed to work closely with co-residents with different backgrounds and personalities. As you all know, I think Rashmi has mentioned a little bit also that there are two very important aspects of leadership. One is the analytical skill. That I think many of us can eventually develop that. If not, we can supplement that with our business colleagues to help us to be able to analyze the spreadsheets, to be able to analyze situations. But the other very, very important skill set is people skill. That as time goes on, you have to be able to interact well with individuals with different backgrounds, with different trainings, with different ideas. And that people skill is extremely important, I think, for you to be able to continue to move up in your leadership roles so that you can continue to work well with people with different backgrounds, personalities, and training. And I'm talking about not only dermatology, general medicine, but also administrative leadership, because as you move up the leadership role, you do have to work very nicely and very closely with your administrative colleague. None of us can be a leader by ourselves. The next slide, please. And I've mentioned already that if you are given the opportunity to have interaction with established leaders that you respect, this is an opportunity that you should take full advantage of. You need to continue to observe, to learn from them about how they manage their leadership role. Because you can, I always tell my residents, for example, in residency program, you have a lot of faculty. Each one of them had different way to approach the treatment of a given disease. Your role as a resident is to learn from them and to distill all this different skill, different ways to approach a disease into your own style. So that is the same thing with the leadership. The next slide, please. And I mentioned already that the importance of networking cannot be underestimated, especially if you want to continue to go up on the leadership role, because you want to know people, you want to be able to work well with people, and you have to have a genuine interaction with those individuals. Not transactional. Transactional interaction doesn't last very long. Once the transaction is over, you're over. But if you have genuine friendship, genuine interaction with individual as person to person, that is the interaction that you want to seek. That's what the networking, the interaction that you want to maintain. My example of myself and Fernando Stengel are in Argentina is a good example of that. From residency until now, we continue to maintain very good, very genuine interaction. It is personally, I find it satisfying, but also in terms of your leadership journey, it is something that is very, very helpful. The next slide, please. So the other part that one needs to continue to keep in mind is that we are physicians, we are dermatologists. So that is our roots. So as you develop your area of leadership and your administrative responsibilities continue to increase, you have to make sure that you maintain the connection to your roots, which is dermatology. So this, you have to continue to maintain your clinical skill set. This is the advice that I get from Dr. Bear, actually. After I finished training and I was a faculty, I had periodic lunch with him, and that was one of the advice that he gave me as I became the chief of staff of the Manhattan VA Hospital. I remember very distinctly in one of the lunches, he said, Henry, you are a dermatologist. Make sure that as you continue to move up on the leadership role as the chief of staff, you have to maintain your clinical skill set. That's what I took it very seriously. I continued throughout my journey, continued to have clinical practice, continued to maintain my skill sets as a dermatologist, continued to maintain my area of expertise, which is photodermatology. Keeping in mind that when you're a leader that is considered to be a physician who is a leader, is always more valuable than a leader who is a physician, meaning the physician is being considered as an administrator. It is much more valuable as a leader who is viewed as a practicing physician, as a physician who understands what our troops in the front line dealing with patients on day in, day out basis, what they have to address, what they have to face on a daily basis. It is definitely much stronger and much more respected as a physician who is a leader. The next slide, please. I mentioned the importance of mentorship. You need to identify mentors. They are very, very important as you move up. And the mentors could be different as you progress in your journey. I'm going to highlight my own journey on this, just on the importance of mentorship and the different mentorship. The next slide, please. So this is my first mentor, the one who is seated, who is Dr. Rudy Bear. He was my chair when I became a resident, and he was the one when I told him that I wanted to do an academic dermatology. He was the one who directed me to my second mentor. Next slide, please. Who is Dr. Irma Gili. She is a physician, a dermatologist by training from Argentina, but she practiced essentially as a scientist in the US. She did not practice medicine. And with this, I was exposed to two very different leaders. Dr. Bear was trained in Europe, so this is in the late 70s, early 80s. He was a very typical European gentleman, very gentle but very firm, and very, very well respected. His department at that time has truly all-star cast of dermatologists. It took a skill set. Now that I am a leader myself, it took a skill set to be able to make sure that all these stars, they can coexist under one roof. He was able to do it and do it well. Irma Gili, on the other hand, she is Argentinian. I now looking back, I truly admire her for the effort that she has to put in. She was one of the first women who is very, very well respected in her field, which is in basic science immunology. And it took her a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice to be able to get to that level. And she was a very different style of leader, but nonetheless, she was successful. Again, I learned from both of them to instill it into my own leadership style. The third mentor is the one who is standing on the picture there, which is Dr. Irvin Friedberg, who was the chair of NYU when I returned from San Diego back to NYU. He was the chair then. He was helpful in helping me to identify some of the pitfalls, some of the landmines as I became chief of staff, because he knew the institution, NYU, very, very well. Next slide. Subsequent to that, I was recruited to come to Henry Ford, my current institution. And coming to Henry Ford, Dr. Clarence Livingood on the left and Dr. Edward Crowell, my two predecessors, were very, very important and instrumental in helping me to settle, not only physically, but also to know the landscape at Henry Ford, to know which persons, the various roles, both formal or informal roles of various leaders within Henry Ford. Both of them were leaders within American Academy of Dermatology. Clarence Livingood was a former president, and he was a long-standing executive director of the American Board of Dermatology. He was the one who got me involved to the American Board of Dermatology, which is the certifying board in the US. And Dr. Edward Crowell was also very involved. He was a pioneering dermatologic surgeon in the US. So again, you can see, depending on the journey, you have to identify different mentors, and you learn from them. You respect them, you learn from them. The next slide, please. So some of the personal tips of leadership journey. One, leadership is a marathon, not a sprint. Throughout my journey, I never aspired to become a chair. I never aspired to become an ILDS president. But as time goes on, I said, well, this is something that I enjoy. So I continued to do what I was given the opportunity to do, and you'd be recognized for that if you continue to do it well. The other part is that, again, be respectful of others who have come before you, because clearly they have opened the path for you. You need to continue to respect them, learn from them, and continue to move on. The next slide, please. The other part is that this is by now quite clear to all, I think, is work-life integration. Health and family is utmost important. Without health, you're not going to be able to perform well in whatever role you have, and it's essential to have support of your family. And the effort, the activities, and the time commitment to work varies depending on the stage of your family life, essentially. I know for myself, when I'm fortunate that my wife, who was an internist, she has retired now. My wife was extremely supportive, but still, when the kids were young, I did not spend as much time traveling. I did not spend as much time working, because I wanted to be able to carve out some time for the two sons that we have. As time goes on, as they have their own family, I have more flexibility on those aspects. But those are the balance and the integration that you all have to continue to manage. This is very personal for each one of you, but I think you have to find your own integration and balance on this. The next slide, please. Rashmi mentioned about this before. Character and integrity. There is nothing to replace a character integrity, so that people can continue to respect you. Keeping in mind, whatever you do as a leader, you're always being watched. As that is just the way it is. As a leader, the troops would watch what you do, what you do not do, what you say, what you do not say. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to maintain your character and integrity at the utmost level. The next slide, please. The other part is that do enjoy what you do. I always tell my kids, you have to enjoy your work. Otherwise, you have to look for something else, because we all work very hard. We put in a lot of hours, weekends working. If you enjoy it, it is fun. If you don't, it's become a chore. You don't want to be a chore. You want to enjoy what you're doing. So, just make sure that, whatever you find doing, you find enjoyment. And you find fulfillment in doing that. The next slide, please. I mentioned already that given the opportunity, make the best of it. Make sure if you are assigned to a committee, for example, be engaged, participatory, prepare yourself, Rashmi was a good example of that. For example, running this session, she organized it very, very well. She obviously prepared it to the nth degree, and that is a sign of a good leader. And people would recognize you for that, and then as time goes on, people would give you additional responsibilities if that is what you would like to do. Next. I mentioned already about mentors, so this is extremely, extremely important. Next slide. Next. So once you're in a leadership position, several tips. Next slide. You have to lead by example. I mentioned already integrity, character. You have to lead by respect. There are two types of leaders. The way I look at it, you can be a leader. People follow you because they respect you. A good example that I've mentioned early in my career is Dr. Rudy Bear. You can lead because people fear you, because people know that if you don't do what they ask you to do, you'll be punished. You do not want to lead by fear. You want to lead by respect because you want people to continue to be able to follow you, continue to be able to interact with you, and as importantly, for them to give you feedback to make sure that you all get to the area that you want to go well and as a team, because there is no leader without followers. You can lead by fears. It is not infrequent, as time gets tough, people would just leave. The next slide, please. It's very important for all of us to be non-judgmental and fair. I think this is looking back in my own upbringing, the fact that I was brought up in a multicultural environment, the fact that I continue to work in a multicultural environment during the residency and beyond, it gives me appreciation of people coming from different angles in terms of point of view, in disagreement, and so on and so forth. You have to respect them. You listen well to others' perspective. They may be absolutely correct, even though they may be different than your point of opinion, but they may be different. They may be absolutely correct. So you always have to be non-judgmental and fair, and be able to listen, not hear, but to listen well to others' perspective. The next slide, please. As a leader, whatever decision you make, it has to be transparent, because then if you are not, there is always people will know eventually. And there is a Chinese saying, if you want people not to know, you better not to do it. 要是人不知，除非计谋为。So I think that is the part that is very important, that you have to be transparent decision making. You have to make sure that your decision is fair and non-judgmental. The next slide, please. The other part, as you move up on the leadership rank, you have to show what you have accomplished for the organization. You have accomplished for that particular task. Then you can negotiate from a position of strength. I've had people coming in asking essentially for a lot of things, but as a leader, it is hard for you to judge whether this is just us, or is it something that truly the person can do. It is much easier for the leader to make the decision if someone asks based on saying, look, this is what I have done, what I have accomplished. If you give me additional opportunity, if you give me additional resources, this is the next step of accomplishment that I can do. As a leader, it's much easier for me to be persuaded in that situation than having someone coming in the US, we call it asking for the moon. That is very, very difficult for all of us to make, to agree on that type of request. The next slide, please. This is the last slide. This is a slide that I have in my dining room. For those of you who read Chinese, 习坏如故，壮志凌云. Next slide, please. Translated, have aspirations, but be humble. I think it is very, very important, as you're moving up on the leadership ladder, you have to treat people well. You have to treat people with respect and dignity. And in fact, one of the things that you can do that you observe people as you move up the leadership rank, people will treat you differently as you become a leader. That is a given. That is a human nature. But the important part is that you can observe how people treat you, how the same person treats you while you were moving up. That tells a lot about that person's character, and you can form your judgment accordingly. So have aspirations and be humble. Lastly, Rashmi, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and to the audience, thank you very much for listening. And I hope this is helpful for you. This is very personal and personal aspects. Some of them may fit you, some of them may not, but just take it as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Lim. I think, wasn't that awe-inspiring to all of us, who were listening to that? And also it was very interesting because it was a personal journey with so many stories, interwoven. So I'm now going to open this up for questions and answers because I'm sure you must be waiting. And I'll start up, I'll ask one or two questions which I have got from some of you, and then I'll probably take up one or two questions in the chat box. I think I can see one question there, but you can type, you can put up your name and the country where you're from, and just say that I want to speak. And do you think, Jennifer, that we could open this up actually, like, we could stop screen sharing? Would that be better? Yeah. So we learned a lot from your lecture, Professor Lim. But there's
Thank you.
one question, that I have, since you mentioned that you've been exposed to two very wonderful Asian cultures right in the beginning, which was the Indonesian one and the Chinese one, and then pursued medicine and dermatology in USA. I think that's always a dream that people have. What would you say were the positive points from both these diverse worlds? Say it's the best of the East and the West, which helped you in your leadership journey.
Very good question, and a very interesting one. I think it is something that evolves because for me, from the Asian culture, that both Chinese and Indonesian culture that I grew up in, I think I learned that I respect my teachers, I respect my elders, I respect my parents. Those are value that is intrinsic to me as an individual, and that I continue to carry it throughout my life. Doesn't matter whether I'm in Asia, in Africa, or in other parts of the world, and of course in the United States. So that is a given sort of baseline that I have, basic character that I have. Something that I did have to adjust coming to Canada and eventually professionally growing up in the US is that you have to learn appropriately to speak up. Because in Asian culture, speaking up, especially if you are a junior person, is frowned upon. It's even more so if you're just beginning your career. But in the Western culture, unless you speak up, people think that you do not know. People think that you are not engaged. So you need to be able to speak up. Clearly, it is a balance. You want to be able to speak up when you have something to say. You want to be able to speak up so that you can contribute to the discussion, but without domineering and overpowering in the discussion, especially if you're a junior person. If you do that, it is not going to be appreciated by all. So it is something that I have to learn how to balance that. I'm by nature an introvert, and probably most of you would not think so, but I'm by nature an introvert. Yeah. and that is again another learned skill that I have to continue to learn. Even now, to be able to speak up appropriately when there is an opportunity, when there is something that I have to say, and also to be able to interact with people in a cocktail setting, for example, to be able to have small talks, to be able to get to know people. That is a learned skill, at least for me, that is a learned skill to be able to do that, because it is important to get to know people, to continue to maintain your network. Again, genuine network, not transactional type of networking.
So I think what you've said echoes, a lot of our feelings, that what we learn actually from our cultures is respect, true respect of our roots. And also, very importantly, the important point that you said, that in the Western culture that you have to speak up, but speak appropriately. something that I think I learned gradually while working in the Women's Dermatologic Society, the American Academy of Dermatology, and even the International Society of Dermatology, that you have to, speak up, but speak appropriately and with reason. So I think everybody's got that wonderful message which is there. And isn't it interesting, Professor Lim, that most of our great leaders, many of them are introverts actually. So, and they do a lot of public speaking. It's always interesting how people evolve. So with that, I'm going to ask you one more question. I You have led both the AD and the ILDS, two very different organizations. One, the largest dermatologic organization in the world, everybody looks up to, and the other, a global umbrella organization of dermatologists. Is there something that really surprised you while you transitioned from leading AD to ILDS?
Not so much a surprise, but definitely there is a difference. I think the reason it wasn't a surprise is that there is a time gap in between my presidency of the AAD, which is 2017-18, until I become the president of ILDS. And of course, when I was in ILDS, before I became president, I was a board member, so I knew I learned to understand what ILDS does and so on and so forth. But there are two very different organizations. Both of them are very large, but AAD is specifically focused on the American Academy of Dermatology activities. Specifically, we are a membership organization. So the activities of AAD and the mission of AAD is to take care of our members. There are a lot of socioeconomic issues that we have to deal with, which is absolutely appropriate because obviously our members have to be able to get reimbursed appropriately, have to be able to practice medicine well without too much of administrative interference, without having non-dermatologists encroaching into our space. So that is a lot of the activities that we do in the AAD. We have a very strong advocacy arm in Washington, D.C. For example, our Washington, D.C. office is a very, very large, almost as large as our office in Chicago. So, the activities is very, very different. At that time, my travel were mostly to visit the various state society within the US to make sure that our members knows what we are doing, and also as importantly as a leader for us to know what our members want us to do as an organization. It has changed a little bit. I think in the past few years, AD is becoming more international. So there are more international presence of the American Academy of Dermatology in the international forum. For example, in ILDS, we invited the AD leaders to come for the Moshi CME this past January for them to have international presence, but also for us in ILDS or Moshi dermatologists and care providers to know about the American Academy of Dermatology. In ILDS, on the other hand, we deal obviously, as you had mentioned, with global issue. So it is completely different scope. We deal with a lot of under-resourced area, how to make sure that dermatology care can be appropriately provided to the under-resourced area for area of people that really need our dermatology care. A month ago, some of us was in Patagonia, where there is only one dermatology for the whole area. And for us to be able to go there, ILDS has provided grants on that for us to be able to be there to see patients. We converted a school classroom to become clinics to see patients there, and clearly those patients really needed dermatology care. So it's a completely different type of vision, different type of activities. For us, for example, in ILDS, we interface with the World Health Organization. So the issue is much more global, very gratifying. Both are very different organizations in terms of the mission, but requires nonetheless still the same leadership skills that I have just mentioned.
Thank you so much, Henry. So I'll be taking up a few questions now from the audience, and I'll take maybe the first question from Rohan, because Rohan, you had typed your question first, I could see from India. So you could unmute and speak. Next would be Dr. Tammy Feringer. Third would be Saloni, because I'm just speaking out the names as I had seen it. So just be ready. You can unmute, just keep the question brief, and Professor Lim will answer. So would you like to ask the question, Rohan? Would you like to unmute? Or otherwise, I'll just ask, I think, his question. I think what he has asked is that he's working in India currently and wants to do a residency in dermatology in the USA, and he's actually looking for mentors, being here. Rohan Tilati from India. So what exactly could he do, to get some mentors? That's what he's asking. It's in a gist because it's a long question, I think.
Yes. This is a very frequently asked question. A lot of people approach us for these, both in my role as the dermatology faculty at Henry Ford, but also in my travels. I hate to disappoint, but it is extremely, extremely difficult for international medical graduates to be able to practice in the US. Mainly because dermatology in the US, just like in many parts of the world, is extremely, extremely competitive. And every single year, we have quite a large number of US graduates, US medical school graduates, who do not match in dermatology. So it is, for most programs, our preference and our priority is to consider seriously US medical school graduates. In the past few years, also, for example, it used to be only allopathic medicine graduate, which is MD, would be considered for most of dermatology residency. Osteopathic graduate, DO, have their own residency program. But in the past few years, the two has merged together. So we now consider MD as well as DO into residency program in the US. So, but still, these are all US graduates. Not infrequently, we also have American who goes abroad a lot of time to Caribbean to go to medical school there to come back. And so even though they're US citizen, but they're international medical graduates, so sometimes they want to apply for residency. Even for that group, is quite difficult. Having said that, there are always exceptions. There have been a few that are international medical graduates get accepted into the program. A lot of time, what they do is that they do research. They do research and they do it well. They become quite as well established, and because of that, they are given special consideration for acceptance. But that is very, very sort of iffy type of proposition, because you may spend 1 or 2 years, 3 years doing research, yet at the end you still cannot get in. So I think one has to think very, very carefully before jumping into that pool.
So I think that has been nicely answered. And I think while you're giving the answer, there is somebody here who is doing residency in dermatology from India. And she did say that she will probably get in touch, even with that other person.
Yeah.
I had one question from, Tammy. Tammy has written an interesting question that what an amazing life journey. Do you want to speak out actually? Are the panelists able to speak actually? Jennifer, are they able to unmute? Yeah. Tammy, would you like to speak your first question if you can unmute? And next is Saloni Katoch.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Henry. So yes, quite an amazing life journey you've had. And I just wonder if you have any advice for those of us who haven't had such a worldly life experience early in their life. How can we understand and experience diffuse cultures?
I think, Tammy, a very, very good question. Tammy, for those of you who do not know, is one of the definitely upcoming leaders within AAD and also within ILDS. She is involved in some of the ILDS committee in dermatopathology, and she is involved in International Dermatopathology Society. I think you're the president now. So I think the journey that you're going through of getting involved in international organization, DermPath is a very good example for that. It's definitely the appropriate step, in my opinion. The fact that you were given the opportunity to lead the organization, it shows that your ability to be able to work and with international group of individuals. So those are the opportunities that probably you need to continue to do, to attend international meetings, which I know you do, and to get involved with the ILDS. We have a lot of activities, including the one in Moshi, Tanzania, CME, for example. Those are opportunities that you could do, are to continue to immerse yourself in the international type of societies. That is how at least I feel, and that I broadened my own view. For example, very early on in my career, I started going to EADV meetings. At that time, the American who goes to EADV can be counted by probably not more than 10. But clearly now there's a very large contingent of Americans going to the EADV meeting. But that time, I enjoyed it because I was able to interact with the various leaders and various colleagues in Europe. And Europe is a fantastic, EADV is a fantastic organization because there are people from all over different types of countries coming into EADV. Again, I have quite a strong connection with the Asian societies, especially the Chinese ones. I go there on a regular basis, and again, there's another opportunity for me to be exposed to different cultures. So I think, Tammy, you're moving on in the absolutely the right direction. You're a recognized leader already in the U.S. and you're recognized internationally. It's a matter of spending the time and effort. Again, that this is the part that I mentioned, the work-life integration, right? When I was when the kids were younger, it's much more difficult for me. Now, the kids are grown, it's a bit more easy. You have to find your own balance on that part. Hope I answered the question, Tammy. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lim. In fact, I like the word work-life integration rather than balance, because I think, it's never perfectly balanced. So that integration word is really nice.
Yeah.
So I have a question from, Saloni. Can you unmute her, Saloni, if you could ask that second question, which is more interesting about, mental health. I thought that was a very pertinent question. Yeah. Can you unmute Saloni, please? Yeah, Jennifer, could you? Yeah, okay. Yeah, can you please speak? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Professor Lim, for a very inspiring talk. My question is as follows. How important is mental health for a leader, and what measures must one take to take care of it?
Very good questions that come back to health in general, right? I think it's extremely important. Without naming names, among my mentors, for example, they are very different temperaments as an individual. Just like we interact with people, and they all have different temperaments, and you learn from that. You can see how the person deal with stress or with difficult situation, and depending on their personal style, they would deal with it emotionally, they would deal with it analytically, or they would deal with it stoically. And you need to learn what is best for you, what works the best for you. So having said that, I think it is important for sure that you have to maintain your calm and your fairness, your non-judgmental view. This is easier said than done. Definitely, I think all of us have our emotional trigger, right? In a meeting, if something doesn't go right, sometimes you get so frustrated that you may say and express something that you may regret down the road. So that is something that you have to continue to learn and train. Definitely myself and all of us, I'm sure, had made that type of mistake that you say something in the meetings that, looking back, I shouldn't really have said that. Nowadays with the email, same thing. You could send an emotional response to an email that you would think, a day later that this is an incorrect response. So usually my advice is that try to maintain your cool, to maintain your calm. There is a trained skill. Sometimes you have to take a deep breath. Just like, what I tell my residents, some patients would upset you because they are so antagonistic, is that there is no reason to continue to argue with them. If you really feel that you're getting to your emotional point that you may want to sort of explode, best take the deep breath, step out of the room, maybe wait for a few minutes, get your faculty member to come in with you so that you can deal with the situation professionally. In some ways, that is how one needs to deal with the emotional, stressful situation. Taking a break periodically, taking a vacation periodically, spending time with your family periodically, even for a few hours a day, those would give us a mental break from what you're doing. And I think those are very healthy type of habit. There's a habit that one, you have to learn, but you have to be disciplined enough to continue to make sure that gets implemented every day. Email is very easy. If there are emotional things, usually I tell myself, I tell my colleagues, best to wait for overnight before you respond.
Yeah, I think that's such a nice answer, because sometimes when you wait overnight, I think, things really mellow down, by the time you write back again, or write the email and don't send it. This is something I think one learns with time. It's so important, what Professor Lim has said. Is Sebastian there? I think Sebastian was wanting to ask a question, but cannot see him. One question that I have for you, Professor Lim, before we are nearing, the winding up, for young dermatologists, especially from underrepresented backgrounds, breaking into leadership can actually feel very intimidating. I think we've all been there, faced that. What's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you early in your career, or something that you would like to give them?
Yeah, that is a very, very good question. Because human nature is that you want to work with people who are quote unquote like you. So meaning appearance, gender, and so on and so forth. I first learned about that when I worked very closely with my second mentor, Julie. I mentioned she was a very prominent scientist, and she was a very prominent scientist who happened to be a woman, who happened to be from Argentina. So I saw the effort, the extra effort, and the sacrifice that she had to do to be able to achieve to the level, professional success level that she had. So I learned from that. That you do have to keep on trying. You need to make sure you have something substantial to present and to offer. That you have to have a unique skill set. You need to be able to speak up appropriately about what you have done. Again, for some of us, it's not so easy because of our cultural upbringing. And you need to have a genuine network of individuals who appreciate what you do, who knows you well, genuinely, not transactionally. So there are a lot of factors that has to be considered. I never thought about it that way, but throughout my career, I'm one of the very few East Asian who have gotten to this level of leadership in the US as well as globally. But that's something that those are the skill sets that I observed and learned and integrate into my own style. It is something that you have to continue to sort of practice and practice appropriately. I'm certain we all make mistakes along the way, that you learn from your mistakes.
So thank you so much for that, answer. I think that's a very good answer that you've given to many of the young dermatologists. And the last question, because unless somebody wants to ask this, you must have seen the rise of digital dermatology and telemedicine over, so many years, and it has impacted dermatology quite a lot. How would you say the ILDS plays an important part, in this change? I know that we've been talking about it, but we'd like to hear, from you.
Yeah, so on several levels, clearly, one, coming back to Tammy, we have discussion previously about the dermatology, for example. That is a possibility that one can explore. We have not fully, ILDS have not fully explored that, but hopefully the committee that I'm in would be able to continue to explore. Obviously, in terms of telehealth, that is done in multiple settings, and to the extent that we can continue to do that, we have a GLODEM program, the GLODEM mentor and mentee. We use a lot of our tele-learning to do that. In terms of clinical care, I think each one of us would have to do it at our own setting as to how to do it best. So ILDS would continue to facilitate that to the extent that we can help. We will do so. We are developing image gallery, and obviously it's all going to be digital. It's not completely complete yet. Rashmi has been involved in the early stages of selecting the appropriate vendor to be able to do that with us. So I think those are efforts that we are actively working on, but it is something that will go on, that we will have to deal with that. But I firmly believe that it is not going to replace dermatologists. They still need, dermatology to be able to verify the various aspects.
I think that's very important. ILDS is always with the change, and ILDS always has also been working with the digital dermatology task force, has been looking at image libraries, and most importantly, as Professor Lim said, that telemedicine and artificial intelligence cannot replace the empathy factor that is there, the empathy and the care which is there. So for all of you, who are scared of teledermatology, I think we have to use it, to our best abilities. Now, with that, we've had a wonderful time conversing with you. And I have definitely, enjoyed it as much as I'm sure the audience has. But we'd actually like to hear, really from some of your mentees, people who you've really mentored, and now they are your colleagues also. They are working with you. Nothing can be wonderful but to see, their growth. And we have with us, two videos. One is from, Dr. Iltifat Hamzavi. He's a staff physician at Henry Ford at Detroit. He's also founding co-chair of the Global Vitiligo Forum, as well as we also have Dr. Tasneem Mohammed, who's a former research fellow and resident of Professor Lim. She joined, that long back, when she was a fellow. She is currently the chief of the pigmentation clinic at Henry Ford and works on photodermatology, vitiligo, and pigmentary disorders. It's a small world. While conversing with her, I came to know that the first International Dermatology Congress, which she had been encouraged to attend, happened to be the one by the Pigmentary Disorder Society, which I had organized in New Delhi. So it's interesting, it's a small world, although it's very big. Thank you so much. So over to Iltifat and then to Tasneem.
I think the voice is muted.
Yeah, the voice is not coming through.
Lim's work.
Yeah.
I've been asked to comment on Dr. Lim's leadership style. My name is Iltifat Hamzavi. I'm a dermatologist at Henry Ford Health System, as well as a Hamzavi dermatology specialist. I have a focus on some of the diseases that Dr. Lim works on. So in summary, I would describe Dr. Lim's work ethic and his leadership style of being one of mission-centered optimism. He has this incredible ability to work very hard, but he also recognizes the humanity of each individual who's working towards accomplishing a goal that is well beyond us. It's a mission that we all aspire towards. And Dr. Lim has been an example of how to do it with an optimistic fashion. He has this little line, and that's a good problem. And we would bring him all these challenges that we're having with HS or vitiligo or photoprotection, and we would be overwhelmed, we would be sad. And then he would contextualize and say, look, that's a good problem. And he didn't judge it. He didn't tell us why it was a good problem. He just reminded us it was a good problem. And years later, I can tell you it was a good problem because we were going to do what we loved. We were helping people in a way that would go well beyond our careers. And we were pushing the envelope. So thank you, Dr. Lim, for being a good problem for all of us. And thank you for the ILDS for recognizing the talents of this wonderful human being who we didn't realize was a gift to us in Detroit, and then became a gift to the American Academy of Dermatology, and now is a gift to global dermatology. We can all do better. We can all do more. But if we do it with a smile, with the recognition of the humanity of each one of us, we will all do the good that we aim to achieve in our lives.
Hi, everyone. My name is Basim Mohammed, and I'm a staff physician in the Department of Dermatology at Henry Ford, where I've had the honor of being mentored by Dr. Lim for the past 10 years. As a leader, I would say his style is characterized by caring, connection, and professionalism. Dr. Lim is one of those people who genuinely cares about the people that he works with, and he takes an interest in you, getting to know you. And I think that's why, whenever he makes a recommendation or does anything, you feel comfortable with it because you know that he's acting from a place of caring and what's going to benefit you and the organization as a whole. Because Dr. Lim is so great at meeting people and getting to know others, he's also great at facilitating connections, whether between individuals or institutions or organizations. And I think that's another of his really great strengths. So if you have a committee that you want to be on, or if there's someone with similar interests as you that you want to get to know, he's the person that you reach out to, and he always facilitates these connections with such graciousness. And then finally, Dr. Lim's level of professionalism is unparalleled. I always know that no matter how sticky a situation is, he will see it through and, come to a resolution that's always fair for all parties involved. And I think he's really modeled that for me. So I know myself and many of my colleagues, whenever there is something that comes up, we always think of, what would Dr. Lim do? So Dr. Lim, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me personally, for our specialty as a whole. I know that there are many of us who have really benefited from your leadership.
So I think you've just heard from, Dr. Henry Lim's mentees, what they had to say about his leadership style and what they have emulated over the years. It has truly been wonderful having you with us, Professor Lim, because I think, we've learned so much in that lecture and also in the interaction. And I'm sure that, people had a lot of questions to ask, but, you can still mail the questions if you have them. You can either send them to Jennifer Kilmer, and she's at jkilmer@ilds.org if you feel so, or you can even mail them to me at rashmisarkar@gmail.com. So with that, thank you so much, for staying with us right at the end. But before I end, this very wonderful webinar, any, last tips or, advice from you, Professor Lim, before we finish? I'd also like to thank our wonderful ILDS staff, that is, Arpita, Jennifer, and Emma for, being with us, keeping it so technologically so beautiful. So over to you, Professor Henry Lim.
No, I think that it is truly an honor and truly a pleasure to be able to speak about my own journey. This is something that I have truly enjoyed, and I think I've been blessed to be able to do all these activities that I enjoy and hopefully benefit dermatology in general. And along the way to make acquaintances and friends over the years, which I truly enjoy. And I think throughout my career, I've been very fortunate to work in organization that has been very, very good. Henry Ford, NYU, AAD, as well as ILDS, and all the staff I have truly appreciated working with. And I want to thank you for the invitation, and Rashmi, and the video was truly a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And please remember that this is just the beginning. This is not the end. Professor Henry Lim has set the stage, but you'll be hearing more from our global dermatology leaders, along with also our academic webinars brought to you by the ILDS Education Committee. Please share feedback. I think they've already written to you in the chat box. It's info@ilds.org or jkilmer@ilds.org. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day today and see you again for our next webinar, which will be next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.